Hey everybody, today I am down in Los Angeles finally getting hands-on with Cadillac's latest three-row electric SUV. It's this, the all-new Vistiq. Yes, another three-row Cadillac SUV, because we're also going to be getting the Cadillac Escalade IQ. If you want something that's bigger, large, in charge, basically an electric version of the Escalade, that's coming soon. You can think of this as the electric version of the Cadillac XT6, and this is going to be the direct competitor to the Volvo EX90, of course the Tesla Model S, and something like a Rivian R1S as well. Let's take a deep dive into this model, and we'll talk about what we know and what we don't know yet. We don't know the price tag, but expect it to stick pretty close to something like that Volvo EX90. Now, up front, you'll notice it has a look that is definitely Cadillac and definitely electric Cadillac as well, with this full LED digital grille here, very similar to what we see on the Lyriq. It's going to display a number of different patterns and animations on startup, and it's going to be different from trim level to trim level. Today we're taking a look at the Sport version. If you get the other trims, we're going to get more bright chrome accents all the way around, but they're all going to have the digital grille, and they're all going to have the Ice Cube style waterfall headlights that also animate. I love that the Cadillac art and science design direction has evolved so well over time. Cadillac's not exactly calling this that anymore, but you can see a lot of those cues from Cadillacs 20 years ago are continuing on into their modern lineup. I think it looks refreshing and modern still. Now on the tire front, we have two 85/45 R21s on this model. These are the standard 21-inch wheels apparently. You can get up to 23-inch wheels if you get carried away with things. Keep in mind that that is going to impact your range. We don't have official range figures just yet. I suspect it's going to be somewhere around 300 miles. It could be a little bit lower though, because the Volvo EX90 with a slightly bigger battery pack than this has a range of around 300 miles. We should know more when this goes on sale in 2025. Production's going to start in early 2025 with sales starting a little bit thereafter. Now let's talk about what's going on under the body. We have a 102 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery pack. It's part of the Ultium family of batteries, so it's the same pack that we find in a number of other different electric Cadillacs. Standard also will be 615 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque, but you notice we have a 900 E4 badge on the back. E4 means that this is electric and it's going to be all-wheel drive, so two motors. The 900, that's the amount of torque in Newton meters rounded up, same thing that Cadillac has been doing for a while. I find that a little bit silly, but what is not silly is the performance, because if you hit the V button on the steering wheel, this will go 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. So this is going to be just as fast as the majority of the entries in this segment. Of course, if you want bonkers level of performance, then you ought to check out something like the Rivian R1S, because with its quad motor setup, not only is it going to go a little bit further on a charge most likely, it's also going to be faster, but also probably more expensive. Now, charging happens behind this door right here. We don't have any charging information as far as charging curves, but it's probably going to be substantially similar to the other approximately 100 kilowatt hour batteries in the GM lineup. So it's probably going to top out at around 180, 190 kilowatts. They have said that the CCS connector is going to be standard in 2025, but at some point in the future, it's going to convert over to the native J3400 connector, also known as NACS. One quick digression while we're talking about charge ports. This is going to support the General Motors Home Backup Power option. That is a system that you would install in your home. It is an extra cost, but it's going to allow you to have access to the complete 102 kilowatt hour battery pack in the event of a power outage at home. And this is an awful lot of power. It can run the average American home for 2 to 3 days, depending on exactly, how hot it is outside, how much you're using your air conditioning in your oven, etc. But with the off-board inverter connected to the CCS connector, it can off-board enough power to run all of those things for your home in the event of a power outage, just like the Silverado, the Hummer, etc., etc. General Motors hasn't said exactly how that's going to work once their vehicles move over to the J3400 or NACS connector, but I suspect it's not going to be a problem. And if you install one of those systems in your home now, you'll probably be able to use the adapter to plug in your newer GM EV as well. I don't see any technical issues with that. Now, under the hood, I can't show you under there because it's full of wires and a charger, etc. at the moment, but basically nothing is going to happen as far as usable storage under the hood. This is not going to have a front trunk. I'm a little bit sad about that because there's likely enough room there for a small amount of storage. Keep in mind, we do have the heat pump, we have the electric motors and the charger circuitry, etc. under there, but they could still have given us a pizza box sized area to store your charge adapters and cables, since those adapters are certainly going to be needed for a while, regardless of whether this has the J3400 connector on it or not, because even when it gets that connector, there's going to be a whole lot of CCS charging infrastructure out there in the wild. Now let's take a look at the inside, because that, I think, is where Cadillac has really done some magic with this. I really like the Volvo EX90, but I think I actually like this interior just a little bit better for some pretty logical and foundational reasons. I'll let Nick come over here and just take a look at these seat controls. This is a big annoyance for me on the Volvo EX90. We have actual buttons here for things like seat massage, the four-way lumbar, seat bottom cushion, seat back cushion, etc. On the Volvo, they share just one control for most of those functions, and it's a little bit unintuitive to use. We, of course, also have heated and ventilated seats. I'll actually move around to the other side of this so we can talk about the interior roominess, because the lighting is a little bit better. Dimensionally, this is around 205 inches long, so a little bit bigger than some of the GM mid-size crossovers that are 3 rows, about the same size as a Cadillac XT6, a little bit longer than that Volvo EX90, which is probably, again, the closest direct competitor to this. You could also check out something like a Mercedes-Benz EQS, but it has a teeny tiny 3rd row, and it's going to be fantastically expensive. The R1S is much more off-road focused, much boxier and more upright, whereas this has more of a traditional Cadillac crossover vibe. Dashboard and styling, we'll take a look at that in a bit, but as far as front seat comfort goes, these feel very similar to what we find in the Lyriq. I'll go ahead and adjust this seat to where I find it comfortable as a passenger, with my feet there flat on the floorboards. Let's hop into the 2nd row and see how this goes. One really cool touch that really stuck out on the spec sheet, for me at least, is the 5-zone automatic climate control. Yes, 5 zones. So zones each for the driver and front passenger, zones each for the 2 people in the 2nd row, and then a 5th zone for the way back. You can see with this seat adjusted like that, I have maybe about 4 or 5 inches of legroom left, quite a lot of room. Also, really handy touch that we see in a lot of other General Motors vehicles. You have 2 ways of moving the 2nd row seat. You can fold it down like that to give yourself a larger cargo area, or you can also tilt and slide the 2nd row seat forward. This allows you to leave a child seat latch anchored into place, and that's going to be really handy for families that are looking for a 3-row EV, something that we don't find actually on a majority of the competition, whether we're talking about electric vehicles or not. And it does make getting into the way back pretty easy. Back here in the 3rd row, you can see how much legroom I have there. So, maybe about 2 inches or so. I have somewhere to stick my feet under the seat. It's not an enormously roomy area under there. Headroom's pretty generous, depending on exactly how you have, the 3rd row positioned. The seats are relatively upright. We have a separate sheet of glass here, so it's kind of a 2-pane panoramic moonroof. One big one up front, I'll show you that in a bit, one smaller one back here. But as far as headroom for the passengers in the back, this is where the hinge for that rear hatch lives right there, just actually in front of the rear head restraints. So in a more natural seating position, I have some headroom. Back there toward the head restraint, don't have any left. And these seats are pretty low to the ground, something that we find in a lot of other 3-row vehicles. Well, we're back here. Let's take a quick look around. We have a little dressy ring around the cup holder there. It's a nice touch. Contrasting stitching on the soft touch armrests. Air vents for the 3rd row passengers, and they include little USB-C charge ports. I really like the way they've integrated that into that air vent there. Of course, this is going to be more of a temporary use 3rd row than something like the Escalade IQ, which is why the dimensions are a little bit smaller. The window back here is a little bit smaller. It has that sort of Cadillac design theme right there. And then we find some speaker grills just up front. As we see in other EVs, the skateboard-style battery pack really pays dividends when it comes to interior room. The roofline is lower than some gasoline competitors, but on the inside, we find more room. Cadillac says about 20% more room than we find behind the 3rd row of the XT6, and that's not including this underfloor storage area. I'll let you go ahead and come in closer so you can see what's going on. I suspect you'd be able to fit maybe some small carry-on luggage under there. Definitely gym bags, things like that would easily fit under the floor. And then you could probably put some 22-inch roller bags right there. This model has power folding 3rd row seats, if I can choose the right button here. Power folding 3rd row seats. They do appear to be relatively quick. Of course, I didn't fold that one down properly there. We'll see if it completes. Nope, get stuck. We also have the power folding 2nd row seats. That helps improve that process right there, and that gives us a really nice long flat load floor. Now let's take a look around the interior. We have Nick there in the back seat showing us the headroom at what, 6'2"?
6'1".
6'1", okay.
2 on a good day.
2 on a good day, if he's feeling a little tall. We have a panoramic moonroof with a power shade that actually blocks all the light. That's a feature that I really like, but you should know that the third row panoramic section does not actually have a shade, powered or otherwise. Up here on the ceiling, we have the Star Trek communicator style speakers. We have a 23 speaker audio system standard, and you find those in the front row and back there in the second row as well. We even have speakers in the head restraints. You can see those perforations there on the driver's side head restraint. Height adjustable shoulder belts for the driver and front passenger. Seats that look very similar to the ones in the Lyriq, but I think that the seat bottom cushion is just a little bit longer. We'll have to actually get some time in here to really tell the difference. Now this model has some really cool trim on the doors. It's a combination of carbon fiber and copper wire. They're actually epoxied together in that trim panel. But if you want something a little more luxurious and certainly more Volvo-like, then you want the top-end trim of Vistiq. They brought along a trim panel that we're going to find in that model. It has a navy blue two-tone theme, apparently, and the doors are going to include a fabric insert, that leather there, contrasting stitching, lots of open-pore wood, and then laser-cut sections where the ambient lighting strips are going to show through. So it looks like there's going to be ambient lighting above and below the wood, and then inside the wood. I really love that Cadillac has brought this along and let me play with it, because you can actually see exactly how ambient lighting strips like this work. There's actually a big acrylic channel behind there. That's the big light pipe that actually allows light to be evenly dispersed through the ambient lighting panel in the vehicle. Again, really cool touch. That panel would logically go right over here on the doors. On this front door, you can see again the controls for the seats that I showed you earlier, with memory settings for the front passenger seat. More speaker grills going on down there at the bottom of the door. One surprising touch, though, is that we do find hard plastics on the lower section of all 4 doors, including the front doors. That is a little bit less premium than we find in the Volvo. Again, we don't know exact pricing, but I suspect it's going to be fairly close to that EX90. Over here on the dashboard, we have the same style air vents that we find in the Lyriq. You can see that inside there is a little vane that moves around there, and then you have this knob to actually open and close the vent. The passenger side vents, I think that's fine. This big central vent, I find it a bit difficult as the driver to actually direct air around where I want it. Now we do have a glove box in here. Over here on this side, you can see it's a pretty typically sized bin style glove compartment. I don't think an 11-inch tablet computer would fit inside, but speaking of tablets, we have an absolutely enormous 33-inch screen that runs across the dashboard, and it is a touchscreen display all the way from the right all the way over there to the left, because we do have some touch controls over there on that side that I'll show you in just a second. Of course, here we do not find Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. This is running the native Android operating system that we find in other Ultium vehicles, only without that smartphone connectivity feature. General Motors is really dedicated to this. They say it's the best way to provide trip planning, DC fast charging information, etc. I just really would like the choice of what to use, and I do find myself gravitating towards smartphone projection. Let me know what you think about that down there below in the comment section. Over here we find a control that we don't find in the Lyriq. It's another screen that allows you to control the 5-zone automatic climate control. Yep, again, 5 zones. So the third row passengers, they're not relegated to different or the same temperature rather as everybody else. Over here we have the controller for the infotainment system, some touch buttons there, roller style volume knob, more cup holders with a push down section so that way you can store your phone there if you want to. Back here we find a small storage area with a USB-C charge port. It's not terribly long or terribly wide, but you probably could fit a half gallon of milk in there because it's actually quite deep. And that's because, again, we have a dedicated EV platform. So the skateboard battery allows us to have lots of storage under the center console, right like that, and right here in this area as well, where we find 2 more USB-C charge ports and 2 wireless charge mats for your smartphone. So you can store your smartphone back there, have those USB ports if you want to, and of course we have that touch screen there. The steering wheel, that's pretty similar to the Cadillac Lyriq. Of course we're going to get Super Cruise. You can see that Super Cruise LED bar right there on top. We have a number of different layouts for the LCD screen, very similar to the ones in the Lyriq. Over here, of course, we have the air quality at the moment. And then we have the touch screen, because if I move all the way over here, sorry guys if this is a bit difficult to see on camera, we have the trip computer, we have our active safety stuff over there, and then we have the headlight controls. That's what's going on that side of the steering wheel. Now, if we take a look back where Nick is hanging out there in the rear, you'll notice we have armrests for the second row seats. All right, like that. Latch anchors, of course, for the outboard seating positions, and then door panels that are very, very similar to the ones up front, including that harder plastic down there at the bottom, but also those same speaker grills right there on top. And between the front seats, we have another touchscreen, basically mimicking the functions that we found in the screen up front. This has a really nice look to it. It actually looks pretty huge, I would say, in this center console. These air vents are a little bit more traditional, even though they share the same knob from up front, but you don't roll it around to open and close the vent. Down here we have some USB-Cs, more cup holders, a little storage cubby right there, and of course, a 120-volt power outlet. The only thing missing at this point is the Vistiq's price tag. We don't know what it is, but it's probably going to be in the high $70,000 to low $80,000 starting range. Basically right in line with the Volvo EX90, not too far off where we find the Rivian R1S, and of course, the few upcoming competitors that we are going to have in the luxury space, most notably the Lucid Gravity, and there is going to be a Genesis 3-row EV. We don't know any details about the Genesis just yet, but we're going to see the upcoming Ioniq 9 here really, really soon. I wouldn't consider this competitor to the Kia EV9. The EV9 is a lot less expensive, it's certainly more mainstream focused, and the interior is not as nice. Doesn't have the same sort of luxury features that we find here. Now, one big point of differentiation for the Vistiq versus every other competitor currently available is going to be Cadillac's Super Cruise system. It's quite simply the best hands-off-the-wheel steering system available in the United States right now, and you're going to get it only in the Vistiq in a 3-row EV at the moment. Or if you want to pay a little bit more, obviously you can get it in the Escalade IQ coming up soon. Which model is right for you is going to depend on exactly how much space you want in the back and how much you're willing to spend. The EQS has an available 3rd row, but it gets pretty darn expensive if we're talking about the top-end versions of the EQS. If you want more range, we do have the massive battery packs available in the Rivian R1S, but you're going to have to give up some of the practicality features that we find here, like the second row seats that let you leave a child seat latch anchored into place, and again, of course, the Super Cruise system. The Volvo EX90 is a pretty tough competitor, and Volvo has promised that there are going to be higher levels of autonomy in the EX90 at some point in the future. We just don't know what those higher levels of autonomy actually are because they haven't actually shown them off yet. That comes standard with the dual motor setup. It comes standard with a slightly bigger battery pack than we find in the Vistiq, but I think that the interior here is a little bit roomier, and I really like some of the touches that Cadillac has put onto this. I also like the exterior styling just a little bit better than that Volvo. Let me know what you think about that all down there, and of course stay tuned because we should get pricing details coming up soon, and of course this is going to be on sale in early 2025, so stay tuned for that as well.